Welcome to the Heartbreak Chronicles, where every story is a raw reflection of life. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned, give us a like to show your support, and share this episode with your friends. Don't forget to leave a comment and let us know what you think. Now, let's dive into today's story. The night sky of Los Angeles is dotted with sparkling stars, and the hustle and bustle of the city seems to soften on this particular night. In a luxury hotel in the city center, the annual interior design industry gala is in full swing. Inside the ballroom, the drinks were flowing and the clothes were on their backs, and everyone in attendance wanted to make a lasting impression on this important occasion. Zephyr Reeves, a talented architect, is standing quietly in a corner of the ballroom, his deep brown eyes gazing silently at his wife, Lark, through a half-full glass of champagne. Lark is a reputable jewelry designer whose glittering blonde hair is illuminated by a crystal chandelier. However, it's not the beauty of his wife that catches Zephyr's attention at the moment, but her iffy interaction with a man. The man was Thaddeus Blackwood, a wealthy real estate developer and one of the main sponsors of tonight's gala. Zephyr noticed that whenever Thaddeus was near Lark, there was a special sparkle in her eyes, a passion he hadn't seen in his wife's eyes in a long time. Zephyr gently shook the champagne in her hand, trying to quell the uneasiness that welled up inside. He thought back to the past few months when Lark's behavior had become increasingly strange. She often comes home late at night, explaining that she's working late at the studio. Her cell phone is always set on silent and is never out of reach. And to add to Zephyr's confusion, Lark seems to be growing colder and colder to their relationship and rarely communicates with him even at home. Just then, a waiter approached Lark with a beautiful tray. Zephyr saw a small blue velvet box sitting on the tray, which he immediately recognized as the signature packaging of a famous jewelry brand. The waiter whispers something to Lark, and she takes the box with a smile before casting a meaningful look in Thaddeus' direction. Zephyr felt a stabbing pain in her chest. He knew that box must have contained jewelry of great value, and it was obviously not a gift from him to his wife. He took a deep breath and decided to walk up and question Lark. "Honey," Zephyr whispered, gently touching Lark's arm. "What is that?" Lark was slightly startled, but quickly regained his composure. She gave a charming smile and said, "Oh, this, huh? Just a little surprise from Thaddeus. You know, we're working together on a new line of jewelry, and this is probably some samples he wanted me to see." Zephyr frowned, trying to control her emotions. "But why send it on such an occasion? Besides, I remember you just finished a big project last week. Are you starting a new collaboration so soon?" Lark's smile stiffens a bit as she takes a quick look around as if looking for an escape. "Zeph, you know how fast-paced our business is. Opportunities are fleeting, and we have to seize every possible chance to work together. Thaddeus is a very important client, and I can't afford to miss the chance to work with him." Zephyr felt a wave of powerlessness wash over her. He knew his wife had always been a workaholic, but lately her behavior had really been outside the norm. He tried to press on, but Lark had already turned away and was heading in the direction Thaddeus was. For the next few hours, Zephyr remained standing in the corner, silently watching his wife's every move. He sees Lark and Thaddeus talking frequently, their body language revealing an unspeakable closeness. Whenever Thaddeus speaks, Lark listens intently, letting out a chuckle every now and then. And when the others tried to join their conversation, Lark always skillfully steered the conversation back to her and Thaddeus. As the night grew darker, Zephyr felt himself grow more and more somber. He began to recall all the details of the past few months, how often Lark had mentioned Thaddeus by name, saying how generous and visionary he was. How frequently she had begun to attend high-end social events that happened to be sponsored by Thaddeus, and how often, even at home, she had received phone calls from Thaddeus that lasted a long time each time she spoke. Zephyr felt a wave of nausea as he put down the champagne glass in his hand and decided to leave the suffocating occasion. Just as he was about to turn away, he saw Thaddeus quietly slip a note into Lark's handbag. Lark pretended to straighten her hair and nodded gently. This scene completely crushed Zephyr's last glimmer of hope. He suddenly realized that he might have lost his wife. But, being a rational person, he knew he needed more evidence to confirm his suspicions. Zephyr took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. He decides to watch Lark's behavior carefully over the next few days to gather more evidence. He knew it would be a painful process, but he had to face the truth, no matter how brutal that truth was. Back home that night, the atmosphere between Zephyr and Lark is unusually heavy. Lark seems to notice her husband's abnormality, and she tries to ease the tension with some everyday conversation. "Zeph, you seem preoccupied tonight. Are you having some problems at work?" Lark asked as she removed her makeup. Zephyr sat on the edge of the bed and looked at his wife's reflection in the mirror with mixed feelings. "Nothing in particular," he said softly, "just thinking about our relationship." "Lark, do you think things are okay between us?" Lark's hand paused for a moment, then resumed scrubbing makeup from her face. "Of course it's good," she said, a hint of imperceptible tension in her voice. "Why do you ask?" Zephyr looked deep into his wife's eyes, hoping to find a hint of sincerity in them. "You seem to be so busy lately, we hardly get to spend any time together." "And your relationship with Thaddeus?" "Zeph," Lark interrupted. "We've already discussed this. Thaddeus is just an important client. We only have a working relationship. You don't need to be upset about that." Zephyr was silent for a moment, then said softly, "I hope you're telling the truth, Lark, because I love you and I don't want to lose you." Lark walked over to Zephyr and hugged him gently. "Don't be silly," she said softly. "You'll never lose me. What we have between us is more important than anything else." As gentle as Lark's words sounded, Zephyr didn't feel the warmth she used to. He knew that beneath this seemingly calm surface lay a storm that was about to erupt. He, on the other hand, had to be ready for the upcoming challenge. Zephyr decided to take action. He begins secretly gathering evidence, documenting Lark's movements, and even hires a private investigator to track her activities. Each day he spends in torment, both fearing to discover the truth and longing to know the truth. However, as the evidence accumulates, Zephyr is forced to face a harsh reality. His beloved wife is most likely carrying on a covert affair with Thaddeus. This realization was like a sharp blade that pierced deep into Zephyr's heart. During these agonizing days, Zephyr would often sit alone in his study and look through old pictures of him and Lark. Those photos documented the moments when they met, fell in love, and got married. Each photo held fond memories, but now they had become sharp blades that pierced his heart. Zephyr can't help but start reflecting on what caused the rift in their marriage. Was he so focused on his work that he neglected his wife's needs? Or is it that deep down Lark has always longed for a more luxurious life, something he can't give? However, whatever the reason, Zephyr knew he had to face it. He decided to reveal this painful truth once and for all at the next design industry gala. He knew this decision could change his life forever, but he had no choice. The truth, no matter how brutal, is better than living a lie. As the date of the next extravaganza draws closer, Zephyr feels conflicting emotions within herself. On the one hand, he hopes that his suspicions are wrong and that Lark will offer a reasonable explanation. On the other hand, he longs for the truth to come out and put an end to this agonizing ordeal. On the eve of the extravaganza's imminent arrival, Zephyr stood in front of her bedroom window, looking out at the city lights in the distance. He knew that behind the bright lights lay countless secrets and lies, and he, who is about to unveil the one secret that belongs to him. Tomorrow, all will be revealed and his life will reach a turning point. Zephyr took a deep breath and closed her eyes. He knew that no matter what the outcome, he had to face it with courage, because only then can he be truly liberated and find himself again. Tomorrow would be a new beginning, for better or worse, and he was ready for it. On the night of the extravaganza, the Los Angeles sky was shrouded in heavy, dark clouds, as if foreshadowing an impending storm. Zephyr Reeves stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows in the hotel lobby, gazing at his reflection. There was determination in his eyes, but it was hard to hide a hint of worry on his brow. Tonight, he would reveal the truth that had tormented him for so long. Zephyr took a deep breath and straightened his suit before walking slowly towards the ballroom. Clutched tightly in his right hand was a compact flash drive that stored all the evidence he had collected over the past few months. With each step, he could feel the violent beating of his heart, as if it was about to leap out of his chest. The moment you step into the ballroom, The familiar sounds of mingling and elegant classical music hits you. Zephyr's eyes quickly scanned the entire venue, quickly locking onto Lark's figure. She was the center of attention tonight in a long, shimmering silver dress that glittered under the lights. However, to Zephyr's heartache, Lark is snuggling close to Thaddeus Blackwood, and the two are behaving intimately, with no regard for the stares of those around them. Zephyr forced herself to hold back her inner pain as she silently made her way to the bar. He needed a drink to get his courage up, but he knew he couldn't drink too much because he had to keep a clear head for the next scene. Just then, Zephyr noticed Lark and Thaddeus moving quietly towards a corner of the ballroom. There was a door to the balcony, and it was obvious they wanted a secluded place to be alone. Zephyr felt a tingle, but he knew this might be the best time to reveal the truth. He put down his glass and followed silently. As he pushed open the balcony door, the scene before him froze him in place instantly. Lark was kissing Thaddeus passionately, their bodies pressed together, completely absorbed in each other's warmth. Zephyr felt a wave of vertigo, and his world seemed to collapse at that moment. Even though he had long suspected it, it was still incredibly painful to witness this scene. His hand involuntarily reached for his pocket and pulled out his cell phone. In that moment, he made a decision that he would film the scene as a final piece of evidence. The click of the shutter stung in the silence of the night sky. Lark and Thaddeus separated in panic and turned to look at the source of the sound. When they saw Zephyr standing there, both of their faces instantly lost their blood color. "Zeph," Lark spoke shakily, her voice filled with fear and guilt. "It's not what you think," Zephyr sneered, his eyes filled with pain and anger. "It wasn't what I thought it was." "What was it like then, Lark? Tell me, my dear wife, how do you explain what I just saw?" Thaddeus tries to interject. "Look, Zephyr, we can talk." "Shut up," Zephyr roared, his voice drawing the attention of the other guests in the ballroom. "I don't want to hear any of your explanations. These photos and videos say it all." With that, he pulled out the flash drive containing the evidence and held it up high. "You guys think you've done a seamless job, don't you? You guys think I'm a fool, don't you?" A flash of panic flashed in Lark's eyes as she took a step forward and tried to grab Zephyr's hand. "Zeph, please, let's go home and talk this through." "Not here." But Zephyr had already turned and walked back into the ballroom. He strides over to the DJ booth and plugs the flash drive into the sound system's computer. To the astonishment of the crowd, he picked up the microphone, his voice husky but firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for interrupting your fun. But tonight, I have something important to announce." The room instantly quieted as all eyes were on Zephyr. Lark and Thaddeus followed in panic, but it was too late to stop them. "My wife, Lark Reeves, and our esteemed sponsor, Mr. Thaddeus Blackwood, have been carrying on a secret affair. And tonight, I finally have hard evidence." As Zephyr's words fell, photos and videos from his collection began to play on the big screen. Those intimate text messages, private dates, and even the kiss on the balcony just now were all there for everyone to see. The whole room was in an uproar. Some people let out gasps of surprise and others began to whisper. Lark's face was pale, her eyes filled with tears and despair. Thaddeus, for his part, looks unusually flustered and tries to explain something to those around him, but no one pays any attention. Zephyr felt a wave of unprecedented relief, but also a deep sadness. He turned to Lark, his voice low and firm. "We're done, Lark. I'm never going to believe a word you say again." When he finished, he slowly removed his wedding ring and placed it on the DJ booth. Then he pulled a letter from his pocket and placed it next to the ring as well. "Here are the divorce papers. I've signed my part. You can get a lawyer to look at it, but I think you'll find it's a pretty fair clause." Lark sobs and reaches out to him. "Zeph, please, give me a chance to explain." But Zephyr had turned away. He walked towards the exit, feeling the countless gazes coming from behind him. Some were filled with sympathy, some with shock, and some with gloating. But at the moment, he didn't care anymore. The moment he was about to step out of the ballroom, he heard a commotion from behind him. Some loudly questioned their spouses, while others began to argue. Apparently, Zephyr's behavior was like a heavy bomb that set off a chain reaction in an upper-class circle that carefully maintains superficial harmony. Zephyr didn't look back. He stepped out of the hotel and took a deep breath into the night air. In the sky, the dark clouds were gradually dispersing and a few stars were looming. He knew that starting tonight, his life would change forever. But for some reason, he felt a long-lost sense of relief and freedom. He stopped a cab and left the place of lies and betrayal without looking back. And behind him, the entire design world is in turmoil, with countless secrets and scandals being revealed and one seemingly perfect marriage falling apart. Zephyr knows that this is just the beginning, but he was ready for a new life. The sunlight poured through the cracks in the blinds on Zephyr Reeves' face, waking him from his light sleep. He opened his eyes and for a moment was in a bit of a trance, not knowing where he was. With that, the memories of the previous night came flooding back like a tidal wave, causing him to frown. He looked around. It was an ordinary hotel room, the very place he had temporarily checked into after leaving the extravaganza. Zephyr sat up and picked up her cell phone that was sitting on her nightstand. The screen showed dozens of missed calls and hundreds of unread messages. He took a deep breath and began to skim the information. There were pleas and explanations from Lark, threats and pleas from Thaddeus, and many more were inquiries and sympathies from industry peers. What caught Zephyr's attention the most, however, was a message from his longtime friend and industry-renowned PR expert Aria Montgomery. "Zeph, your behavior last night sent shockwaves through the industry. We need to talk. This is far from over." Zephyr sighed and replied, "Okay, Aria. Meet me at the usual cafe in an hour." An hour later, Zephyr pushed open the glass door of the morning cafe. This small store in downtown Los Angeles is where he and Aria have talked for years. He caught a glimpse of Aria sitting in the corner with 2 cups of coffee in front of her, obviously having been waiting for a long time. "Good morning, Aria," Zephyr said softly, taking a seat across from her. Aria looked up, a hint of concern in her sharp gaze. "Zeph, you look terrible. Did you have a bad night's sleep last night?" Zephyr laughed bitterly. "What do you think? How could I possibly sleep well after publicly exposing my wife's affair?" Aria nodded and pushed over a cup of coffee. "Have some. Refresh yourself. We have a lot to talk about." Zephyr took a sip of her coffee, feeling the familiar bitterness spread through her mouth. "Go ahead, Aria. I want to hear what you think." Aria took a deep breath and began. "Zeph, your behavior last night was like throwing a bomb into a calm lake. The whole design circle is now in a mess. You probably don't know what happened after you left." She paused as if organizing her words. "At least 5 couples broke out into arguments on the spot, and 3 of them have already started contacting divorce lawyers. There are also several famous designers whose extramarital affairs have been revealed. Zeph, your behavior is like opening Pandora's box. Everyone started to doubt their partners and started digging into the secrets of those around them." Zephyr listened to Aria's words with mixed feelings. He knew his actions would create a stir, but he didn't expect the impact to be so great. "What about Lark?" He couldn't help but ask, a tremor in his voice. Aria's expression became complicated. Lark. She was in a difficult situation. Her design studio has received several notices of canceled collaborations. Many feel that she has betrayed not only you, but the trust of the entire industry. As for Thaddeus, his company's stock price dropped at the opening this morning. Zephyr lowered her head and stared at her coffee cup. Should he gloat over Lark's plight? But strangely, all he felt was a pang of deep exhaustion and emptiness. Aria continued, "Zeph, I know you're probably in a lot of pain right now, but we need to think about what to do next. Do you have any more evidence on hand?" Zephyr looked up, a sharp glint in her eyes. "Yes, I have. And it's not just about Lark and Thaddeus. In the course of my investigation, I inadvertently discovered more secrets than I knew." He took out a USB flash drive from his bag and put it on the table. It contained a lot of dark information about bigwigs in the industry. Bribery, plagiarism, financial fraud. You can think of it. It's all in here. Aria sucked in a cold breath. "Zeph, do you realize what this means? If this information becomes public, the entire industry will be thrown into turmoil." Zephyr nodded, determination showing in her eyes. "I know. But Aria, should we just let the hypocrisy and corruption continue? Maybe it's time for a complete purge." Arya is silent for a moment, then says slowly, "Well, if that's your decision, I'll support you. But we need to proceed with caution. We need to have a plan in place to ensure that justice is served while also protecting the innocent." Over the next few hours, Zephyr and Arya discussed in detail what to do with this information. They decided to publicize the evidence in batches and strategically, while at the same time giving those involved a chance to explain and correct themselves. By the time they finished their discussion, the sun was setting in the west. Zephyr stood up, feeling physically and mentally exhausted, but with a strange inner peace. "Thank you, Arya," he said sincerely. "Without your help, I might have made even more reckless decisions." Arya smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "That's what friends are for, isn't it? Remember, Zeph, no matter what happens, you're not alone." After leaving the cafe, Zephyr wandered aimlessly through the streets. The afterglow of the setting sun gilded the entire city with a layer of gold, and pedestrians were in a hurry on the streets, each busy with their own lives. He thought of the secrets that were about to be revealed, the people who were about to face a turn in their lives. He didn't know if he had made the right decision, but he knew that once something started, there was no going back. Back in her hotel room, Zephyr turned on her computer and began drafting an email. This email will be sent to everyone in the industry, exposing truths that have been covered up for too long. As his finger hovers over the send button, Zephyr suddenly realizes that he's not just exposing someone else's secrets, but also reinventing his own life. Regardless of the outcome, from this moment on, nothing will ever be the same again. Taking a deep breath, Zephyr hit the send button. The moment the screen showed "email sent," he felt as if he had lifted a heavy burden. Outside the window, night fell and the lights of the city came on. And in the midst of all this light, a storm big enough to change the whole industry is quietly brewing. Zephyr walks over to the window and looks at the lights in the distance. He knew that starting tomorrow, the entire design circle would be thrown into an unprecedented upheaval. And he, Zephyr Reeves, will be at the center of that storm. But strangely enough, he was unusually calm in the face of the coming chaos, because he knew that sometimes only after experiencing complete destruction could a true rebirth come. Along the California coastline, golden sunlight pours down on the fine, soft sandy beaches, and the waves gently lap against the shore. Zephyr Reeves stood in front of his newly rented beach house and inhaled deeply the salty ocean breeze. It's been 6 months since the night that changed everything, and in those 6 months the entire design world has undergone a sea change. Zephyr looked down at the coffee cup in her hand, and the corners of her mouth couldn't help but lift into a smile. The mug bears the logo of New Life Design Studio, a small design company he founded with his new partner, Skylar. "Good morning, Zeph," came a crisp voice from behind her. Zephyr turned around to see Skylar running down the beach, her dark hair a little messy from the ocean breeze, but a pleasant smile on her face. "Good morning, Sky. How's the morning run feeling?" Zephyr asked, handing her a cup of coffee. Skylar takes the coffee and grins. "Awesome. I think we should move the studio to the beach. Imagine how wonderful it would be to design while listening to the waves." Zephyr laughed softly and shook her head. "I'm afraid our computers will be ruined by the sand. We might consider working from the balcony, though." The two men laughed as they walked into the house. The living room has been transformed into a minimalist yet cozy workspace with design sketches and inspiration boards covering the walls. Sunlight pours in through the floor-to-ceiling windows, adding a warmth and vitality to the entire space. Zephyr sat down at his workbench and turned on his computer. Several new emails popped up on the screen, one of which was from Arya. He clicked on the email and quickly skimmed the contents. "What's wrong?" Skylar asked with concern as he noticed the change in Zephyr's expression. Zephyr took a deep breath and said slowly, "Arya said that the Great Purge in the design circle is basically over. Several large design companies were investigated for financial fraud and unfair competition, and some well-known designers were removed from the industry for plagiarism and plagiarism." He pauses and continues, "But at the same time, there are emerging, talented designers who are beginning to make their mark. The whole industry is going through a rebirth." Skylar nods thoughtfully. "Isn't that what you'd like to see? A fairer, more transparent design community?" Zephyr laughed bitterly. Yes, but I didn't realize the cost would be so great. A lot of people lost their jobs, and some once glorious companies went out of business. Sometimes I wonder if I've gone too far. Skylar walks over to Zephyr and pats him on the shoulder. Zeph, you just exposed the truth. Those people are paying the price because of their own behavior, not because of you. You gave the industry a chance to start over. Zephyr is silent for a moment, then nods slightly. You're right. It's just, sometimes I still think about Lark and the dreams we used to share. A wave of mixed emotions flooded Zephyr's mind at the mention of Lark. According to various sources, Lark's design studio has folded, and she herself has retired from the design world. The last I heard of her was that she was traveling in Europe trying to find her way in life again. Skylar seemed to sense Zephyr's change in mood as she whispered, Hey, aren't we supposed to be discussing a new project today? That eco-themed resort design? Maybe we can start with that and focus on the future instead of the past. Zephyr gave Skylar a grateful look, then perked up and began flipping through the design sketches on his desk. You're right. Let's take a look at the project. I was thinking we could incorporate some local nature elements. Over the next few hours, the two men enthusiastically discussed the details of their new project. As the discussion progressed, Zephyr felt a long-lost excitement and enthusiasm surge through her body. That's why he chose to become a designer in the first place, to create beautiful things and change the way people live. In the late afternoon, Zephyr and Skylar decided to take a walk on the beach to find new inspiration. Strolling on the soft sandy beach and listening to the sound of the waves, Zephyr felt a peace within herself that she had never felt before. You know what, Sky? Snapped Zephyr. I'm starting to understand why they say a blessing in disguise. If it hadn't been for that betrayal, I might never have left Los Angeles, never have come here, never have met you, and never have had the chance to rethink my love of design. Skylar smiles and looks off into the distant horizon. Life is like that, Zeph. We never know what the next turn will bring. The important thing is to keep an open and brave mind. Zephyr nodded, feeling a warmth surge through her heart. He begins to realize that perhaps some special feelings are sprouting between him and Skylar. But this time, he decided to take his time and cherish this hard-won peace and happiness. Back at the studio, the two continue to bury themselves in their new project. As night fell, Zephyr stood on her balcony, gazing out at the shimmering sea in the distance. He remembers everything he's been through. The betrayal, the anger, the revelation of the truth, the escape, and finally the rebirth. He took a deep breath, feeling the peace and contentment within him. He knew that he had a long way to go in life, and that the rebuilding of the design world was just beginning. But right now, standing in this tiny beachfront studio, he feels like he's finally found his place. Zephyr turned to look around the room. Skylar was working intently at her computer, the side of her face looking beautiful in the soft light. He smiled and walked back indoors, ready to continue their work, because he knows that true happiness does not lie in success or fame, but in every full and meaningful moment now. And now, finally, he had the courage to cherish and grasp such a present moment. The twilight of the Mediterranean Sea envelopes the Greek island of Santorini like a light veil. Lark Reeves stood outside a small cafe on the edge of the cliffs, his eyes gazing away at the golden-red sunset over the sea level. The breeze ruffled her blonde hair, bringing with it the faint smell of sea salt. It was her third month of aimless traveling in Europe since leaving Los Angeles. Lark took a sip of the coffee in his hand, the bitter flavor spreading across his tongue. It reminded her of the many mornings Zephyr had made her those perfect cups of coffee. Those good times that are long gone are now only a lingering scent in the memories. What are you thinking about? So lost in thought? A gentle voice interrupted Lark's thoughts. She turned around and saw Helena, the cafe's owner, looking at her with a smile. Lark forced a smile, just thinking about some past events. Helena sat down in the chair across from Lark with a hint of realization in her kind gaze. My dear, I can see that you harbor a lot of stories in your heart. I've seen too many people like you on this island, coming here with hurts and regrets, hoping to find a new direction. Lark is silent for a moment, then whispers, Helena, do you believe that people can really change? I mean, fundamentally change. Helena looked thoughtfully out to sea in the distance. I believe everyone has the ability to change. But true change takes courage, honesty in facing one's mistakes, and letting go of pride and self-righteousness. Lark lowered his head and stared at his coffee cup. Helena's words were like a mirror to her deepest struggles. Ever since that fateful night, she had been running away from facing her mistakes, running away from those who had been hurt by her actions. I used to think I had it all, Lark said softly, a hint of a catch in her voice. A successful career, a perfect marriage, a glittering social circle. But now I realize that those were just appearances. My pride and selfishness destroyed what really mattered. Helena reached out and gently patted the back of Lark's hand. Admitting your mistakes is the first step to change. But more importantly, you need to learn to forgive yourself. Lark looked up, tears glistening in her eyes. But how can I ever forgive myself? I hurt so many people, especially Zephyr. He gave me all his trust and love, and I failed him. Helena said gently, forgiveness is not about dismissing past mistakes. It's about giving yourself a chance to start over. Lark, you can't change the past, but you can determine your future. Those words were like a bolt of lightning that illuminated the darkness within Lark. She suddenly realized that she had been running away from the problem for months instead of actually facing it. She ran away from Los Angeles, her career, and everyone who knew her, but she couldn't run away from her heart. What do I do? Lark asked, a hint of confusion and hope in his voice. Helena smiled and said, start small. Maybe you can write to those you've hurt and sincerely apologize. Not to be forgiven, but to express your remorse. Then you need to reconnect with yourself and find out what your true passion is. Lark nodded, feeling a long overdue surge of motivation through his body. That night, she sat on the balcony of her hotel room and began to write a letter. The first letter was, naturally, to Zephyr. Dear Zephyr, she wrote, I know this letter may come too late and may not make up for the hurt I've caused you, but I still want to tell you that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for breaking your trust. I'm sorry for hurting your feelings. A tear fell on the paper, haloing the ink. Lark went on to write, I don't expect your forgiveness. I just want you to know that I really regret it. I am learning to face my mistakes and learning to be a better person. I hope that one day, when you think of me, it won't just be pain and anger. After writing this letter, Lark felt a lot of relief in his heart. Over the next few days, she continued to write letters to other people she had hurt. With each letter she wrote, she felt a little farther away from the gloom of the past. A week later, Lark stood on the beach and watched as the mailman took away packages filled with letters. She took a deep breath and felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her. Over the next few days, Lark began to rethink his life. She recalls why she first fell in love with jewelry design, not for fame or status, but to create beautiful things and to make the wearer feel unique and confident. At Helena's suggestion, Lark began learning traditional Greek jewelry making techniques at a small local studio. She finds herself enjoying the pure creative process of not thinking about markets and profits, but just focusing on the beauty of the work itself. Slowly, Lark begins to rediscover the meaning of life. She is no longer the designer who seeks fame and fortune, but a creator who focuses on craftsmanship and beauty. She started to sell her work at local bazaars. Although her income is not much, she feels immense satisfaction every time she sees the smiles on the faces of her customers. However, even in these peaceful days, there is still a hole in Lark's heart that cannot be filled. She often thinks of Zephyr and the time they spent together. She knew she could never repair the damage she had done to him, but she hoped he would find happiness. One evening, Lark once again came to that cliffside cafe. She sat in her familiar seat and watched the sun slowly sink to sea level. At that moment, Helena came over, holding an envelope. Honey, this came in the mail today, Helena said, handing the envelope to Lark. Lark took the envelope and his heartbeat quickened when he saw the familiar handwriting on it. It's Zephyr writing back. With trembling fingers, Lark opened the envelope and began to read. Dear Lark, I was surprised to receive your letter. To be honest, it took me a long time to make up my mind to open it. But now I'm glad I did. I won't say that I have completely forgiven you. That will take time. but I want you to know that I understand that your remorse is sincere. I have also learned to let go and move on during this time. I wish the same for you. Remember, Lark, the mistakes of the past shouldn't define your future. I believe you are capable of becoming a better person. I have a small design studio on the California coast and am living life to the fullest. I hope you find your path and true happiness as well. Good luck. Zephyr. After reading the letter, Lark burst into tears. She felt both relieved and grateful that Zephyr's forgiveness gave her the strength to keep going. That night, Lark stood on the beach and looked at the star-filled sky. She knew that she had a long way to go in life. She lost a lot of things: career, reputation, love. But she also gained something new: self-knowledge, humility, and the courage to start over. Lark took a deep breath, feeling the saltiness of the ocean breeze. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she was ready for a new challenge. Because this time, she will face life as her true self instead of hiding behind a false aura. Tomorrow, the sun will still rise and life will go on. And Lark Reeves, a once lost soul, will greet each dawn with a newfound vigor. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.